Kyiv at dawn. Russia burns by dusk. For years, Russia has spoken of peace while waging relentless war. It has held countless negotiations, signed hollow agreements, and given statements about its desire to end the conflict. Yet every time, its actions have betrayed its words. And on September 7th, that hypocrisy reached a new and terrifying level. That morning, Moscow unleashed its largest strike on Kyiv since the invasion began. Missiles and drones rained down on Ukraine's capital in what international outlets, including The Guardian, called the largest ever air assault against Ukraine. By the time the sun had fully risen, civilians were dead, neighborhoods were burning, and Ukraine once again faced the brutal reality that Russia has no intention of ending this war peacefully. But this time, the story did not end with tragedy alone. By evening, Ukraine had struck back, not with rhetoric, but with precision, strategy, and firepower aimed at the lifeblood of Russia's war machine. The morning attack, Russia's pattern of terror. At exactly 6:06 a.m. local time, while most Kyivans were still asleep or preparing for the day, the first alarms screamed across the city. Moments later, a wave of incoming threats filled Ukrainian radar screens. Cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and swarms of Iranian-made Shahed drones. Kyiv was not alone. Almost simultaneously, explosions and air raid sirens echoed across Zaporizhia, Dnipro, Odessa, Kharkiv, and Kryvyi Rih. This was no limited strike. It was a nationwide assault meant to send a message of dominance, timed deliberately to coincide with the start of the day, when civilians would be most vulnerable. The cost in lives was immediate. At least 3 civilians were killed, among them a mother and her infant child, while 18 more were wounded. Residential buildings were set ablaze. Firefighters scrambled across districts, and once again, innocent families paid the price. And yet Moscow spun its narrative as it always does. These were military operations, not war crimes. The reality on the ground told another story. For months, independent monitors have tracked the statistics. As of July 31st, nearly 13,900 Ukrainian civilians had been killed by Russian strikes. September 7th added to that devastating tally. But there was another symbolic detail that set this morning apart. For the first time, Russia struck a central government building in Kyiv, damaging a major political complex in the heart of Ukraine's capital. The split in strategy, civilians versus capacity. Ukraine could have chosen to mourn. It could have taken time to assess the damage, to bury its dead, and to prepare its defenses for the next inevitable wave. Instead, it chose something different. Even before the last fires in Kyiv were extinguished, Ukraine had already begun its retaliation plan, a set of strikes that highlighted the fundamental difference between the two combatants. Russia's doctrine: terrorize cities, bleed civilians, and weaponize fear. Ukraine's doctrine: strike infrastructure, starve supply chains, and weaken Russia's ability to fight. Where Russia aimed at families, Ukraine aimed at fuel, pipelines, and depots. Target 1: Ilsky Oil Refinery. The first target was the Ilsky Oil Refinery, a sprawling modern facility in Russia's Krasnodar Krai. Within hours of Russia's attack on Kyiv, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces coordinated a strike on Ilsky. The facility is not just any refinery. According to its own official data, Ilsky processes 6.42 million tons of crude oil annually, feeding refined products into Russia's military logistics chain and into export routes across the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. Local telegram channels, including Astra, quickly circulated images and videos of thick black smoke billowing above the plant. Dashcam footage showed drivers watching as flames rose from the complex. As always, Russian authorities tried to downplay the event. Their official statement claimed that UAV debris fell onto the refinery, sparking only a small, quickly extinguished fire. The pattern is familiar. Every time Ukraine hits a high-value Russian target, Moscow insists that its air defenses destroyed the incoming weapons, and the real damage came from debris. The irony is obvious. Somehow, drone debris always lands exactly where Ukraine intended. Beyond the propaganda, the strategic damage is real. Striking refineries like Ilsky forces shutdowns of critical processing units, hydrocrackers, reformers, desulfurization plants that are essential to making gasoline and diesel. These fuels don't just keep Russia's economy alive, they keep its tanks, trucks, and aircraft moving. Repairs are not quick. Under Western sanctions, Russia struggles to source the parts, catalysts, and specialized technology needed to restore operations. Every outage compounds the backlog of maintenance that Russian plants are already struggling with. Target 2, Druzhba Pipeline, Bryansk. The second strike was aimed at the Druzhba pipeline system, specifically the LVDS-8N dispatch station in Bryansk. The Druzhba pipeline, ironically named Friendship, is one of the world's largest oil networks. The pressure inside Russia. The effects are visible on the ground in Russia itself. Across regions from Karelia in the northwest to the Far East, civilians are facing long gas lines, rising prices, and shortages at stations. Analysts estimate that real fuel prices are 20 to 25% higher than official government statistics admit. On the battlefield, shortages mean fewer mechanized assaults, fewer training exercises, and more rationing of critical supplies. Soldiers and civilians alike are paying the price. International ripples. The September 7th strikes also reverberated far beyond Ukraine and Russia. In Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump hinted at a second phase of sanctions in response to Russia's escalation against Kyiv. While he did not specify details, such measures are expected to target countries still purchasing Russian oil, potentially through punitive tariffs. Combined with Ukraine's direct strikes on refineries and pipelines, these sanctions could drastically cut into Moscow's oil revenues, the single most important source of funding for its war effort. Lessons of September 7th. The events of that day highlighted three key truths. Russia's words mean nothing. While it speaks of peace, it attacks civilians. Ukraine's precision strategy works. By hitting oil and logistics infrastructure, Kyiv drains Moscow's ability to wage war without mirroring its brutality against civilians. The economic war is just as decisive as the one on the front lines. When Russia cannot refine, transport, or sell fuel, its tanks stop rolling, and its planes stop flying. Conclusion: a new rule of war for Moscow. September 7th was meant to be a show of dominance, the day it unleashed its largest ever strike on Kyiv. Instead, it may be remembered as the day Ukraine wrote a new rule into the war. Hit Kyiv, and your oil burns. By nightfall, smoke was rising not only over Ukrainian homes, but also over Russian refineries, pipelines, and depots. The message was clear. This war is no longer just about who can launch the biggest strike. It is about who can sustain the fight. And on that front, Ukraine has found Russia's greatest weakness.